Being home alone can be peaceful, but sometimes it turns into something much worse. These are 4 true horror stories from people who found out the hard way that solitude can be dangerous. When I was 16, my parents decided to take a weekend trip and left me alone at home for the first time. At first I was excited. No rules, no one telling me when to go to bed. It felt like freedom. Around midnight, I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard the sound of our front doorknob rattling. It wasn't a casual jiggle either. It was forceful, like someone was really trying to get in. At first, I thought maybe my parents had come home early and forgotten their keys. But when I peeked out from behind my curtain, I saw a man standing there. He was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, and he kept his head low. My heart dropped into my stomach. I stood frozen for a few seconds, just watching him fumble with the lock. After a while, he stepped back and walked around the side of the house. That's when I knew it wasn't some innocent mistake. I grabbed a baseball bat from my closet and locked myself in the upstairs bathroom. Through the small window, I saw him again, now trying to pry open the basement window with what looked like a crowbar. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely dial 911. I whispered to the dispatcher, explaining what was happening. She stayed on the line with me, telling me to stay as quiet as possible. About 10 minutes later, flashing red and blue lights lit up the street. The man tried to run, but the officers caught him hiding behind our shed. Later, they told me he had a long criminal record, mostly for burglaries. If I hadn't heard the door, I don't even want to think about what could have happened. Second story, I was 22 years old and had just moved into my first real apartment by myself. It was a tiny place in a sketchy part of town, but it was all I could afford. On my second night there, I woke up around 3 in the morning to a soft tapping on my front door. Half asleep, I sat up in bed and just listened. After a few seconds, the tapping turned into a steady, rhythmic knocking. Something about it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I stayed perfectly still. After about a minute, the knocking got louder, turning into full-on pounding. I sat there, heart racing, trying to figure out what to do. Then, I heard a man's voice, low and angry, saying, "I know you're in there. Open up." I felt like I was going to throw up. I grabbed my phone, crawled into the tiny coat closet, and called 911. While I was whispering to the dispatcher, I heard the sound of metal scraping against the lock, like he was trying to pick it. I was convinced he was going to get in. It felt like forever, but after about 5 minutes, the noise stopped. When the police arrived, they found pry marks on the door, but no sign of the man. They told me there had been multiple reports of someone targeting apartments late at night, knocking to see if anyone would answer before trying to break in. After that night, I installed a second deadbolt, a chain lock, and bought a cheap security camera. I never slept easy in that place again. Third story, when I was about 14, I stayed home from school one day because I was sick. Both my parents had to work, so they left me with the usual instructions to stay inside and rest. I spent most of the morning watching TV on the couch, wrapped up in a blanket. Around noon, I heard the front door open. I figured maybe my mum had come home to check on me, so I called out to her. No answer. I called again, louder. Still nothing. That's when I noticed that the footsteps didn't sound like my mum's. They were heavy, slow, deliberate. I immediately felt that gut punch feeling of something being wrong. I grabbed my phone and slid under my bed. I tried to stay as still and quiet as possible. From under the bed, I could see the shadow of someone standing in the hallway outside my room. They just stood there, silent, like they were listening. It felt like an eternity, but finally the person turned and walked back down the hall. I heard the door open and close. I stayed hidden for another hour, terrified they might still be inside. When I finally worked up the nerve to check the house, I found muddy footprints leading from the front door to the hallway and back out again. The police said it looked like someone had walked in off the street, maybe thinking the house was empty. We never found out who it was. After that, my parents made sure every door and window was locked at all times. Fourth story, I was 17, and my parents had gone out for a late dinner, telling me they wouldn't be back until after midnight. I didn't mind being alone. I actually enjoyed it. I was sitting in the living room watching a movie when I noticed headlights pulling into our driveway. I wasn't expecting anyone. Curious but cautious, I turned off the TV and peered through the blinds. A man I didn't recognize got out of the car. He wasn't dressed like a delivery guy or anything, just jeans and a jacket. Instead of ringing the doorbell, he went straight for the doorknob and tried it. When it didn't open, he casually walked around the side of the house. My stomach dropped. I ran to the back door and locked it just as he reached it. Through the window I could see him pulling on the handle, testing it. Then he moved to the windows, tapping on them lightly. I turned off all the lights and hid behind the couch, trying to stay calm. I could hear him circling the house, tapping on different windows, trying to find a way in. I called 911, whispering into the phone. The dispatcher told me to stay hidden and stay quiet. After about 10 minutes, the sound of an engine revving filled the air, and I heard the car peel out of the driveway. The police showed up shortly after. A neighbour had seen the guy and wrote down his license plate. Turns out the car was stolen, and the man driving it was caught trying to break into another house later that night. They said he was likely scouting out homes that looked empty. If I hadn't locked that back door in time, things could have gone very differently. Being home alone is supposed to be safe, a place where you can relax, but sometimes it's anything but.